YouTube. And all right, so we are now streaming live on YouTube. So thank you all for coming today, for being a part of this. My name is Patricia Van Haren, and I am the collaborative attorney and mediator in the Irvine Vesta Hub. What that means is I'm an attorney, but I don't litigate cases anymore. I have a solution focused, settlement based model. So, any case that I'm taking, I am choosing some sort of out of court resolution. Either I work with the parties directly through mediation, or I may work with parties and their attorney through mediation, or I may represent one of the parties in a collaborative divorce process. And that's a style of process where both parties and their attorneys have made a commitment not to go to court, not to litigate that case. And so we sign an agreement at the very beginning of the case that disqualifies anybody who's working on the case. And so there's a lot of motivation, and that doesn't mean my clients like each other, they get along together at the beginning. They're just committed to not trying the scorch the earth process. I love being a part of Vesta. I've been with Vesta since 2019 when they first came out to California. And so I am one of the original founding members of the Irvine Vesta Hub. What I love about Vesta is it takes a lot of that dynamic, what I get to do in my collaborative cases, and it brings it to all models of divorce. So whether it's mediation, we can do a team mediation approach, whether it's a collaborative case or a litigated case. And I love having professionals, like we really enjoy working together. And we have friendships that we formed through Vesta and outside of Vesta. So with that, I guess I send it to Dar, and then Dar will go to Glenn. So
okay, I got it working. I was trying to look for the mute button in the middle of all those buttons. Hi, thank you for being here. My name is Dar Marden. I'm a realtor in Southern California. I live in Orange County. I do my business in Orange County and Los Angeles. We have a team that covers both areas. I'm a member of Vesta Divorce. The reason I joined Vesta is because I know how difficult the divorce process is. I know the shock that has hit your system. And I always tell everybody that there's an old saying that it takes a village to raise a kid. Oh, it literally takes a village of professionals to get you through your divorce. And all aspects of it that Glenn talked about, the legal, the emotional piece, the real estate, the finances, and the mortgage. And nobody has the expertise in all these areas. I'm a CPA by education and by past trade. And when I was going through my divorce, I thought I understood all the financial sides of things. Well, that is not true. You need an expert that understands what's going on in the divorce process. You need to understand where the income is. You need to understand where the assets are. And you need somebody to guide you. And we have somebody like Mr. Glenn Crawford, who's a certified divorce financial analyst. So we are a team. We work as a team. We would like you to listen to what we have to do. We are here to help you. The person that benefits the most out of this informative session, and even afterward when you work with us, is you. We will be your biggest advocate, and we will guide you to make the decisions, informed decisions that will set you right for your future, for the new life, for a new wonderful life that's ahead of you. If you need to get in touch with us, the links are on the chat. And with that, I'm just going to hand it to my good friend, Mr. Crawford.
Thank you, Dar. Appreciate it. I'm Glenn Crawford, as I mentioned earlier. I'm in the wellness business. All of us are to some degree. I am in the financial wellness business. I'm an investment advisor. I'm a wealth asset manager. I am those things. I really approach it like my authentic self. It's that of a coach. I help coach people to better outcomes, but I have a specialty, which is helping people learn how to divide the marital enterprise, what you've built together as a married couple, and it's essentially like negotiating a deal. You're negotiating a deal. You're dissolving the marital corporation, and how to do that. Something lawyers that aren't really fully equipped, to do. I heard a quote the other day. I won't say no offense intended because it is offensive, but let the lawyer do anything that's just simple math. Okay. Beyond that, they're not necessarily trained to value pensions and take into account taxes, risk, liquidity, and income. They can advise you what you're entitled to legally, but not what the impact of making those decisions on your life. So we help answer the question, and particularly answer it in a way that's understandable. We don't write prose back and forth. We outline A to Z, all the assets, all the debts, taking into account everything that is in the equation, from spousal support to Social Security to what it's going to cost you in your new life. And we help you understand how and the best way. So clarity, comfort, and confidence, and understanding how to make the decision to divide the marital, corporation. So you wind up saving money on attorneys. The attorneys use our fee. You have a better understanding. And most importantly, you understand what your life is going to look like in post-divorce. Finally, I'm okay with any decision that you make as long as it comes from a position of being informed. And that's covering all aspects. Working with someone like Dar to understand the real estate or the mortgage lending options. Even if you think you might not qualify, you might be surprised that you could qualify for a home. And if you should keep the home or sell the home. Anyway, lot to talk about. Have great fun with it. Can help you with the numbers. I can tell you that you're going to be okay and that you're in for a great night with Miss Kelly Myers.
Thank
Kelly?
you, Ben. Thank you. So divorce is hard, period. There's really no way around that. And I was in your shoes 12 years ago, and I remember the emotional beating that I took during that process. I went through a mediation process, which took probably about 6 months, and ultimately ended up litigating things a couple years later, because I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't have a team to help me. It was just me and the mediator. And I made a lot of poor decisions, which cost me a lot of money, and a lot of emotional trauma, I will say. So I want to impress upon you that it is really important during this really overwhelming process to get the support that you need. So friends and family are important, but remember, they're usually not neutral, and they may not understand the divorce process, and they probably don't know everything about your marriage to be able to provide appropriate advice. Even if they've been through a divorce, I want to impress upon you that their situation is different. Your situation is unique to you. And what happened for other people may not work in your situation. So I really encourage people to seek out the guidance of a therapist or a coach, and sometimes both. A therapist is really there to help you deal with emotional issues, maybe from the past, maybe trauma that you're dealing with from your marriage, maybe mental health issues, maybe some depression or anxiety. Really, therapy focuses on things that have occurred in the past that may be impacting your present or future. A coach really helps you navigate the divorce process and understand all the moving pieces in this process. We're here as a coach to provide you coping skills and tools to help you move in a forward-focused manner. So therapists are more looking at the past, coaches are more forward-focused. So how do you decide what kind of support do you need? I think the most important thing is to get clarity on the source of your emotions. Understanding the source will help you identify the help you need. Are your emotions related to maybe trauma in your marriage or your past? Are you feeling depressed or anxious really stuck and having an inability to move on? Do you have a lot of high anxiety due to not knowing how to manage the divorce and all the overwhelming feelings you have? Do you have a fear about the future? Understanding where your fears and those emotions are coming from will help you decide who is going to be the best professional support for you. Again, understanding that if it's emotions related to the past, those are probably best supported by a therapist. If it's fears about the divorce and moving forward, you might find a lot of support with a coach. The other thing I want to say about emotions before I get into my PowerPoint is it's important to recognize that you can have two emotions that are diametrically opposed to each other at the same time. You can feel sadness or grief over the loss of your marriage, over that future that you dreamed about when you got married, and also feel relief that you're no longer going to be married to this person anymore. It is not uncommon to have two conflicting emotions in this process. So make sure that you give yourself grace if you are feeling some conflict in your emotions, that it is very normal. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get into a PowerPoint. And anybody who was on earlier probably heard me say I'm not an expert at this. So I'm going to share it in a way that you're going to see kind of off to the side all of my slides, but that way I can see my notes at the same time. So recognize that the divorce is not the rest of your life. It is a finite period of time. So in that, what you want to do is understand the cycles of grief. The cycles basically are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. What's important about understanding those cycles is identifying where you're at in the grief cycle and recognizing that you can move around. You also want to understand where your spouse is in this cycle. Well, why do you want to do that? It's important for you to understand where you are because that's going to determine the steps you're going to take moving forward. It may identify what type of support you need in this process. You may need a therapist in the beginning, you may need a coach later on. If you're finding that your spouse is in the cycle, stuck in the cycle of denial or anger, you may approach the divorce process very differently than if your spouse is in depression or acceptance. So knowing where you're at and where your spouse is at is very important. Identify your fears. Research shows that when you write things down, when you're in an emotional state, it shifts you from your emotional right brain to your logical left one. So have a place where you keep everything related to your divorce. I recommend that my clients purchase those multi-subject notebooks that we get our kids for school and divide that into sections. Have a section that's legal, have a section that's financial, real estate, parenting, and then have one that's just related to fears. So when you find yourself ruminating on something or you wake up in the middle of the night and you're overwhelmed with being afraid about something, write that fear down. Then when you have time, whether it's in that moment or later, dig a little deeper into each of those fears and see if you can create a list of questions related to that fear. Then take those questions and put it in the relevant section that it belongs. Is it a question related to legal issues? Is it a question related to real estate, parenting? It may end up in all categories, but the goal here is that you put your fears down on paper. You've created a list of questions, and now you have a list of questions that you can take to the various professionals that you're going to be working with. And what I always find is that when you have knowledge, your fear tends to be lessened because you can now start to look at how you're going to move forward. So next thing is focus on what you can control. You cannot change the past, but you have infinite control over how the future plays out. You can't control what your spouse does or did, but you can control how you respond to him or her and the steps that you take moving forward. I often find that in divorce, people focus on their spouse, what they are or are not doing, how they wronged you or hurt you in the past. And this really is wasted energy. Usually what people are looking for is they're looking for their spouse to change. And the fact of the matter is that your spouse is just doing what they've always done throughout your marriage. And whatever this action is or this behavior is probably contributed to the demise of the marriage, or at least to some unhappiness. So don't think that they are magically going to change. And prepare yourself that some of these behaviors may even become worse during the divorce process as everybody's emotions are higher. Practice forgiveness. Nelson Mandela said that resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it will kill the other person. Forgiveness does not mean that what happened was okay. It also doesn't mean that you have to forget, deny, or ignore what happened, or that your painful feelings are going to automatically disappear when you decide to forgive. Forgiveness is also not always outwardly focused. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for mistakes you made. Maybe for your bad picker. I had to forgive myself for picking a partner that wasn't good for me. I also had to forgive myself for wasting so many years in a relationship that made me unhappy and that didn't allow my children to have the mother that they could have had I been more focused on positive things in my life. So practice forgiveness. So I believe that knowledge, I think I missed one there. Be forward focused. I liken our lives to different chapters in a novel. And that as we have experiences in our lives, as we do things in our life, it creates different chapters. And it's normal during a divorce to want to go back and reread those old chapters and try to understand how you got to where you are, or want to prove where you were wronged or prove where you did things right. And although this is very, very tempting, you cannot change the past. And every time that you go back and reread those old chapters, it's keeping you from writing the new chapters in your book and creating the life that you want to create for yourself. So be forward focused. Write those new chapters in your life. So part of writing those new chapters is gaining knowledge and getting over your fears. And I believe that knowledge is the key to combating your fears. So the first thing that I encourage you all to do is to educate yourself on the divorce process itself. Patricia talked about different ways that you can get divorced. Understand that there are several different ways that you can get divorced, and understand what those are, and which process is going to serve you and your family best. If you have children, remember, you will always be a family. The marriage may be ending, but the family goes on. So in that situation, you are restructuring the family. So be very intentional about the divorce process that you choose, because that's going to impact how the family goes on and how the family restructures. Work with a legal professional to understand the divorce laws in your state. Google is not necessarily your friend in this situation. I liken it to searching WebMD when you have a rash. I don't know about you, but anytime I've searched WebMD, I go away pretty much thinking that there's something dire going on with my health. Make sure that you have a divorce legal professional on your team, a divorce attorney that can advise you on legally the things that you're entitled to, what the laws are, things like that. And I'll get to the word entitled because I have an issue with that. Nor is your friend who recently got divorced a person that is an expert that you want to go to. As I said before, every divorce is unique. Your situation is unique. And even though there may be some similarities, what happened in your friend's divorce probably won't happen in yours. So make sure that you understand the unique qualities of your divorce and get advice from professionals that can address those unique characteristics. Just as a side note, when it comes to legal advice, many people don't know that you don't have to retain an attorney and plop down a big retainer with the idea that they're going to represent you in court. You can have an attorney that is your consulting attorney, or often called a limited scope attorney, that can be there to help guide you in the legal decisions that you have to make in mediation, Or even if you're self-represented, having somebody that can help you understand your legal rights is going to be really important. So don't forget to have that person on your team and recognize that they can be on your team in different ways. It's really important to get clarity around your divorce goals. So what are your goals for the process itself? Are you hoping to avoid the high cost of litigation? Are you wanting to maintain a positive co-parenting relationship? Are you wanting a process that keeps you away from conflict? Are you hoping to avoid any further contact with your spouse? The answers to these questions and more will help you determine what your goals are for the divorce process itself. Get clear on what those are. And more importantly, share those goals with the divorce professionals on your team so that they can help you reach those goals with their expertise and skills. Along the lines of divorce process goals, make sure that you develop a post-divorce vision. And really what that is that kind of identifies what your goals are for your life after divorce. And this is where I'm going to talk about the word entitled. Too often, I hear people say that their goal is that they just want what they're entitled to or what is fair. And in my book, this is a big no-no. Who gets to decide what you're entitled to? You can take 10 different divorces with almost identical situations and have 10 different outcomes. It's important to work with an attorney to understand what the law allows for in your situation, because just leaving it up to what you're entitled to may not get you what you actually need when the divorce is over with. So be very clear on what it is that your goals are post-divorce, what your vision is, because that is going to help you identify what it is that you're negotiating for in this process. And then we get to that word fair. I tend to think that that's a dirty word in divorce because who gets to decide what's fair? I can assure you that if you posed a question about what's fair to everybody who's on this call or on this webinar, we would get different opinions about what's fair. And the reality of it is that what's fair often depends upon how well the people are getting along. And what we do know is that in divorce, there is often times of high conflict or conflict. And so at those times, spouses may not agree on what's fair. So rather than thinking about what you're entitled to or what's fair, spend time thinking about what you want your post-divorce life to look like. Where do you want to live? How do you want to spend your time? What activities do you want to add or delete from your life? What kind of timeshare do you want with your kids? Do you want to work more, less, retire? When do you want to retire? Do you need to go back into the workforce? Do you need some education for that or some skilling up? Really take a look at what you want your post-divorce life to look like. Do you want to travel? Do you have kids in college that you're going to want to be visiting or having brought home or contribute to their life in some fashion? All the answers to these questions starts to create a list of post-divorce goals. And this is what you're negotiating for in your divorce. So you may be thinking to yourself, well, what does this have to do with emotions? Well, what this has to do with it is you being able to really be thoughtful and thinking about the areas of this situation, this process that you have some control over and some ability to direct. Because often the emotions stem from, again, and I mentioned this earlier, the fear of the unknown. And when you do this kind of work, there is less unknown. Things start to become clearer. I used to say that I felt like when I was going through my divorce, like I was walking down a dark hallway and I had no idea what door to open. And so when you follow a process like this, you start to, even if you can't see really far ahead of you, you can at least see the next step to take. And that tends to bring down the fear and the other emotions that you're feeling. So I want to talk a moment about the creation of a divorce team, and everybody here has addressed that, so I don't want to spend a lot of time here. But what I will tell you is that, as Glenn said, usually people rely on their attorney for everything, and attorneys are a fabulous resource, but their expertise is in the law. And yes, they have experience in all these other areas because they work in this world, but they're not an expert in those areas. So for instance, you don't want to pay your attorney's hourly fee to help you with financial issues when that's not where they're an expert. You'd rather pay Glenn who's an expert in divorce finances and lives and breathes it every day and isn't going to miss anything because this is what he does. This is his expertise and his skill set. You'd rather pay him to do that than your attorney. You don't want to pay Glenn or Patricia or Dar to handle any emotional issues or co-parenting issues or issues related to how you move forward in this process, because they're not an expert in emotions. They're not an expert in co-parenting. They're not an expert in communication. You want to work with a coach or a therapist to do that. You want to make sure that you have the right tool for the task when you're building your team. You want to learn to communicate differently. Most couples that are going through a divorce are caught up in an unproductive communication style. I like to call this the marriage corral. And you need to learn a new way to communicate. You no longer are in a romantic relationship where you need your partner to understand you and agree with you. You are in the business of separating your lives and using your divorce to build a foundation for your future. I encourage you to reframe your relationship and operate like you would when you're dealing with a coworker, a teacher, the checkout person in the grocery store. Focus on your communication. Take the emotion out of your words. Treat your spouse respectfully, even if you don't get that in return, because again, you can only control you. So I want to give you a little communication tool here. Biff is a tool that a gentleman by the name of Bill Eddy created. And he created this because what he saw was that as a divorce attorney and a therapist, he was seeing people come to resolution in their divorce only to blow up those agreements as they communicated outside of the mediation room or out of the courtroom. And so he felt that there needed to be a better way or tool that people could go to learn to communicate differently. So he created BIF, and BIF stands for Brief, Informative, Friendly, and Firm. And so real quickly, and I'm going to give you resources where you can get a book on this if you want to learn more about it. But brief is your communication really doesn't need to be any more than 3 or 4 sentences. And this is in writing or in person. You want to be informative. You want to focus just on information. You are a newscaster just reporting the facts. You want to be friendly. That could be a friendly greeting. That could be empathy for the concerns that your spouse may have, or it could just be a positive close. And I'll tell you that in my co-parenting relationship, this was probably one of the hardest parts of the BIF for me. And very often my standard friendly line was, I hope you have a good day, or I hope you have a good week. And that's okay. As you get better at this, you'll learn to find other ways to be friendly in your communication. But one of the most important parts of BIF is that you want to have a firm close. You want to close the door to further conversation. If there's a choice between, or a question about how you're going to move forward on a certain issue, you want to offer 2 options and provide a deadline for a requested response. And also then say what you'll do if you don't get the response. And again, you don't want to do it. And if you don't do this, I'm going to be, I'm going to do something awful to you. No, you again want to take the emotion out of this. You just want to say, so if your spouse is asking whether or not they can take your son to a baseball game on a school night, and you could say, well, Johnny's got baseball this night and this night, so he can go to the game on Thursday or Friday. Please let me know by Monday, at noon, what day you choose. If I don't hear from you, I will assume that you've decided you're not going to go. So you want to make it very clear. You want to take the emotion out of it and not try to make that firm part something that incites more conflict. So lastly, I just want to give you a few resources. I think podcasts are a great way to get assistance and to get the guidance of top-notch professionals, and 2 wonderful podcasts that really have some of the industry's top professionals in divorce are the Divorce Survival Guide with Kate Anthony and the Divorce and Beyond podcast with Susan Guthrie. Another great resource is the New Ways for Families program, which is through the High Conflict Institute, which was created by Bill Eddy. He was one of the co-founders. Lots of great things on there. He's got some on-demand videos that teach you how to do BIF and some other really helpful communication tools. They're $20 to view, and I'll tell you that the quality of them is not great, but the information is fantastic. So really encourage you to check that out. And then for books, Bill Eddy's got a number of BIF books. He's got one specifically for BIF for co-parenting. And we've got The Lighter Side of Divorce by Elizabeth Cohen. Kate Anthony just came out with the D Word. And there's a wonderful book called Making Divorce Work it really addresses emotions. So with that, I will turn it back over to Patricia.
Great. I'm going to